good evening and welcome. So wherever you are in the world, so it could be good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Inspire to Achieve Global TV platform. This is Roxanne St. Clair, and I'm inviting you to join me in the executive suite. And this evening, I have a very special guest joining me, and we're actually just connecting now, hence you can see me looking up and down. I am basically just ensuring that they can get onto the platform with us today, and they will be shortly. But I'll actually introduce you so that you know who our guest is. And today our guest is Donald Brown. He is an award-winning sculptor, and he's also hi Adassa, welcome from Canada. How are you this evening? Give us a wave or some hearts so we know that we're connecting okay. Okay, and yes, so he's an award-winning sculptor, and he's actually a graduate from Wolverhampton University with a BA Honours in Fine Art Sculpture, and he's also a Team GB Masters athlete. He does the fast hurdles and sprint, and he's actually a record holder. So I am delighted that he's going to be joining me this evening. Okay, what else can I tell you about my guest? He's somebody that I met a little while ago, and his story on one of his pieces of sculpture, it was so inspiring that I was delighted when he said yes, he'd like to come onto the show, because you may or may not know that the executive suite was really set up on this platform for executives, team leaders, and business owners who really needed a place to actually release, reconnect, and feel recharged. And what we are doing in the lounge on a Monday evening at 7 and Friday evening at 8 is to do just that. So we'll have content on Mondays where I will talk to you about what you as an executive, business leader can do to actually enhance your performance in your business, because you know it can be challenging at times when the buck stops with you and you're at the top. Everybody comes to you, everybody expects you to have the answers, and you may have things coming from left, from right, from all over the place, and you've got to make decisions quickly. So where do you go in order to get your release? Where do you go where you can be understood? Where do you go when you can be heard and somebody is there to listen to you? Oh wow, I am delighted.
I can see you now.
My guest is here. So.
Am I the right way?
What you're doing now, Donald, is you're now in the lobby. So get your phone and you're there. You got it?
Okay. So
So I'm a bit
I can see Roxanne now. So thank you very much, Bradley.
So
thank you. Take care.
I will be bringing them back soon. So really excited now that my guest is here, and put in for a treat this evening. You know what? I'll let him catch his breath first, because I can see he's probably been doing his fast hurdles again to try and get it. So, without further ado, actually, I'm going to invite him up to join us in the platform. So, are you ready for this? We're going to give a really good, yes, you can, Inspire to Achieve welcome. So, here is the man himself, Mr. Donald Brown.
Thank you very much, Roxanne, for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, Donald. I'm really delighted that you could join me. And I was just telling everybody that you're an award-winning sculptor. So we're honored to have you. Not only that, you're an athlete and a GB Masters. Is it the 100-meter hurdles record holder?
Yes, I hold the British record for the past 3 years now. For the 100 meters hurdles, sprint hurdles.
Wow, so that is just awesome. And you know, actually, I'm not going to me tell people Would you like to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, who you are, maybe even how we met, which is quite interesting as well? And then we'll just let the conversation go from there this evening.
Absolutely. Well, you know, my life, I guess, like many people's lives, has many twists and turns. And I think a lot of those twists and turns effectively sort of determine the kind of person you can become. And one of the early twists or hurdles or obstacles, if I can say, that I had to endure, which I still endure, is I suffer with asthma and bronchitis, and I've always have done. And so the whole idea of playing with friends and running around and so forth was something I really couldn't participate in as a young child because I would suffer from asthma attacks. And so that was one of the, I guess, my earliest setbacks that I can recall that effectively caused me to pretty much sit in the background and watch the world go by and wish I could do this and wish I could do that. And it really wasn't until about the age of 10 when one of our teachers at arts class said, here's a piece of wood, do what you want. And it was interesting to have a figure of authority say, do what you want in school, because all of the subjects that you did, there were rules and regulations. You know, if it was English, you had to have a prefix and a suffix. If it was maths, you know, 1 and 1 had to make 2. And there were all these rules and regulations that you had to learn. So for a member of staff to say to me, here's a piece of wood, do what you want, it was like, wow, it was liberating. It was, I can do what I want, and I got permission to. And I think a lot of my maybe pent up creativity came out in that particular sculpture. Because, well, it really was just a round piece of wood that I polished and polished and polished. I actually snuck it home, worked on it, brought it back the next week. And the school was just shocked. The staff was surprised. They said, wow, you actually did this in a week. And if you can imagine, my self-esteem and confidence, because I couldn't really participate in sports or activities, was very low. I didn't really think I was that smart or was of any worth or real value. And so when I started getting all of this attention that, wow, look, have you seen Donald's sculpture, what he's done? All of a sudden, you know, I was popular. And that for me was an experience that I thought to myself, well, I never want to lose that. But more so, it sowed the seeds of what I wanted to do with my life as an artist, which was to perpetuate and recreate that idea that no matter what you have going against you, you can turn it from a negative to a positive. And now I spend most of my time, should I say, sculpting in clay. And clay, as you know, is mud. And so I like the euphemism of taking mud, a muddy mess, to a masterpiece, and using my sculptures to sort of promote that message of no matter what it is, if it's relationships, if it's work, if it's finance, whatever you're going through, there's a way in which you can turn that negative into a positive. And so I try to use my artwork as a, if you will, a vehicle to promote and address real life issues and promote possible resolutions and answers. And as a result of that, a lot of doors have opened. And obviously now that I'm older, I've been able to sort of, I wouldn't say overcome my asthma, but I've been able to participate in sport a great deal more. And now, of course, representing Great Britain in international competition. So it's been a wonderful, continues to be a wonderful journey.
There's a question just here, and it says, did mindset play a part in your personal growth?
Mindset. Well, I think it's not only a part of your personal growth, it's also a part of your continued development. And yes, your mindset is very important. Why is that? Well, if you look at the mindset of yourself and you compare it to the mindsets of those around you, that's a very, very key dichotomy if you're not careful, if you don't separate them. The reason being, the mindsets of others around you can determine the way your mindset is formulated. And fortunately for me, growing up, I saw the mindsets of many people around me was, in my opinion, limited. And restricting. And when people say, you know, what are you doing playing with clay and mud, and what's that going to do for you? You're going to end up being a starving artist, you know. I realized that their mindset was set in their mind and not mine. And so for me, it was not allowing other people to determine, if you will, my mindset through their eyes. And so, yes, it's important to, one, have your own mindset, but also to have an understanding of how you set your mind.
Yeah, and that is so true. And that leads me on actually to a particular piece of sculpture of yours, which you, when we met, you shared that and you told such a fabulous story around it. that I was captivated.
Hmm.
And do you actually have that piece with you or near to you at the moment? Or...
The way that particular piece, it's actually available in two forms, in print form and also in sculpture form. And ironically enough, I am delivering a replica of that sculpture to a retiring RAF flight lieutenant. His name is Greg Dunstan, and he served 35 years in the RAF. He's actually a patron of one of those sculptures and will be presenting it to the RAF at an event on the 6th, which is next Thursday. And so to answer your question, there are replicas available that I am making available to schools and home buyers and institutions and so forth because of the message that is woven into the fabric of that particular sculpture.
Yeah, and what I'll share with you viewers, I met Donald at the end of last year, and he had this piece of sculpture that if you actually saw the thread in my personal page, you would have seen an image of it, which I will put up on this page after the interview. And in his piece, he's as I mentioned before, he's a world-class athlete. So this piece of sculpture has got all of the different sports you can think of, and they're all interwoven on. It's almost like a plaque.
It is.
But then Donald tells the story because one event leads into the next, and then the way he just tells this phenomenal story. It's mind blowing. What went through your mind? How did you conjure up that image?
Well, a lot of the times when I create works of art, members of the public obviously want to know what the meaning is behind it. And how can I put this? There are many artists out there who are brilliant at what they do. Some of them, in my humble opinion, are promoting negative messages, violence, profanity, degrading women. And I'm not saying they should or they shouldn't, that's their choice. But what I wanted as an artist was to create works of art that addressed real life issues, but what I would regard from a positive perspective. How can I create a sculpture that would address self-esteem, that would promote respect, discipline, patience, humility, forgiveness, addressing gang violence and drugs and all of these and many more principles. And so that particular sculpture, like my other sculptures as well, but that particular sculpture, the idea was, well, how do I create a sculpture that doesn't have any geographical boundaries, sport and art, no geographical boundaries, and how do I address those real life issues? And so, as you will recall with the sculpture, there's a hurdler, and the hurdler represents overcoming obstacles. But the actual hurdle becomes the javelin, which talks about the direction in life you're overcoming hurdles, because that's all part of the cycle of life, hence the cyclist. So it's all woven into that particular sculpture. But what I wanted was for the sculpture to be relevant to everyday people, rather than the perception being art for art connoisseurs and art critiques alone. I wanted the work to be for everyone and for them to be able to look at it, relate to it, and hopefully internalize and personalize the significance into their own lives. Yeah. For me, yes, it's great if you purchase my prints and sculptures, but if you don't, for me, the key is if you get a message, a positive message from my work, if I've done something in that respect, then I've done my job. And that's key, because I don't want it to be something that's forced on anyone. I prefer for them to look at it, observe it, relate to it, hopefully, and get something from it from that perspective. But let me share something with you and it's very difficult to sort of explain the sculpture without seeing it. Mm-hmm. The title of the sculpture, and this is something for the viewers to write down, because you can type this into YouTube and it will come straight up. It's titled "A Sporting Chance for Peace Explained."
Okay, I'm going to put this in for people to see. A sporting
chance for peace.
Explained.
Right. And if you type that into YouTube, I give you a brief overview, and they can actually see and hear what we're trying to relate to them.
Yeah. Wow. And because I know you have a system whereby you take it into schools and you invite people to sponsor a particular school so that you can donate pieces to schools as well.
Yes, it's actually what I didn't want is to charge schools or community establishments to receive the sculpture. The sculpture, the replicas are £3,500, but the actual prints of the sculptures are £35. So 35 goes into 3,500 100 times. So every time 100 prints are purchased, then I will donate a sculpture to a school. And so this allows any organization, churches, schools, universities, if they have 100 individuals that buy the print, they actually become the patrons of the sculpture that goes to the school. There's a plaque with all 100 names acknowledging them as the patrons that will sit permanently beside the sculpture. That way, it negates the cost of the establishment paying for the sculpture, but they become, if you will, recipients of it. And those 100 people, that becomes part of their legacy. They've got the print for themselves, but they're also patrons of the sculpture for school or church and so forth.
What a fabulous initiative, and especially for those children to have, something of that quality that they can do a class at school. And then do you go into the schools and then give a talk and share the story and message behind the piece?
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, with regards to the way things are going, I'm having to be selective because obviously as more and more establishments come involved, I'm only one person. But with that said, that's opened the door for having speakers come on board who will be informed and understand that the process or the narrative of the sculpture, that I can duplicate my role and have them now go out to various organizations. And it gives me a chance to employ great speakers to go out there with a message and to have, if you will, that visual backdrop to work from. And the beautiful thing about the sculpture is that my interpretation is my interpretation from my life. My obstacles aren't your obstacles. My self-esteem degree isn't your self-esteem at the same degree as yours. And so different speakers can tell the same message, but they can internalize and personalize it, which is great.
And it's funny you talk about speakers, because this platform is part of Yes You Can Inspire to Achieve. And one of the things that we do is actually train people to become professional speakers, to go out on a platform to inspire and uplift other people, predominantly with their stories. So you've listened to your story and my story. And we actually have a Speakers Awards event this Sunday.
Okay.
In Whitechapel at the Holiday Inn. And it's, as you mentioned, it's regular, everyday people who through whatever's happened in their life, whether it's an adversity, whether it's just something that's happened where they have a strong desire to help other people. They are coming on the platform to speak and share their story, share their truth with the mindset of being, well, they're heart-centered people. So with the mindset of helping others.
Absolutely.
So what you just described, there's no accident why we're having this conversation today.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, the idea, and I'm not suggesting I'm going to set up a speakers bureau, although that might be something further down the road. But what I'm finding is that when I do share the sculpture with individuals, a lot of people are saying that they want to Jason, sorry, Jason, I'll call you back. I'm on an interview. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm just in demand. Okay, that's my excuse.
Oh,
but what I'm finding is that the one advantage I find that I have is having a visual. For example, when I was in, I went to America for 2 weeks, stayed there for 10 years. The response I had was phenomenal. And one of the reasons I went to America was because I was being accused in England of being an American trapped in a British body. The mentality is brilliant over there. If they see something that they like, they go for it. We tend to be more conservative and reserved here. The reason I'm sharing that with you is this. When I was over there, I would preach, for example, a sermon at a church with my sculptures on stage, relating to the congregation. And then once I was done, apart from literally thousands of prints being purchased in terms of dollars worth, I would get invitations from other churches. Can you come to our church? Can you come to our church? It turned into an automatic tour without any effort. And so for me, the objective is to create a system that, yes, I can facilitate those requirements, but also help others, other artists and other speakers, to have a vehicle that gives them a visual platform to work from. And I will guarantee you, well, you experienced this. When I showed you the sculpture, it captivated you in a way that was different to me just speaking to you.
Mm.
And I think once you capture that attention visually, you're appealing to more senses than just the sense of hearing. And so for me, it's a great way to help up and coming or even established speakers to capture an audience in such a way that they can now deliver their message of inspiration, empowerment, and so forth. And so a lot of doors are opening. I've just been invited to do, I think, a 3-week tour in the Middle East as a result of that particular sculpture. So a lot of doors are opening, and going right back to many years when I was invited to speak at the United Nations, again, regarding using art to promote peace and positive principles for life. So there's a lot of doors that have opened and continue to open, and my excitement continues to grow every day. It's a great journey and continues to be.
Fabulous. And because you mentioned earlier on about when you decide to pursue a career in art, people will say, "Oh, you're going to be, a starving artist." But then the athletic side of it, again, you have to reach a certain level in athletics in order to generate, what we call a good income, because through endorsements and winning at meets and things like that. So you then decided to really take on a challenge. So what you mentioned about mindset? What is it then about you that enables you to take on these challenging roles but still stay grounded?
Well, I think it goes back to the person that asked the question about mindset. And it really is about what it is you want out of your life and what you want for yourself and how you want to give back and help others. Having a mindset, having a wholesome mindset, is one that certainly takes care of yourself, but also expands and takes care of your brethren, those around you, both loved ones as well as strangers. And I think when you have a holistic approach to life like that, what you give, I know it's often said, what you give, you receive tenfold. These are things that are intangible. You can't go to the store and purchase these when you get these benefits back to you. And so for me, what I want out of life is more than just to create sculptures or to make money. I want that which can elevate and uplift both myself and others. And so this is a great way in which to do that. As far as athletics is concerned, what I love about athletics is I was very guilty when I was 13, 14, and I was looking at people who were 25 and 30. To me, they were old. When you're 13 and 14, 30 is old. And so when I got to 30, I thought, hold on.
I'm not that old.
I feel great. I got to 35, I felt great.
Yeah.
40, great. 45, great. 50, great. Next month, I'm 55.
Oh, fabulous.
So the whole point of the athletics was to raise the awareness of not just athletics, but health and wellness. And not buying into the notion that once you're 30, you're over the hill. Yes, we don't progress the same way, but there are many masters athletes, and we say masters because I think in England it's 35 upwards, and I think in America it might be 30. I know there's changes there, but the bottom line is 30 upwards. What you do, you compete against your peers who are in a 5-year category. So when I turn 55 next month, I will compete with athletes worldwide who are 55, 56, 57, 58, and 59. That's the 5 years. Then I progress to the next stage. So it's all done in 5 years. But when you look at athletes who are 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, if you go online and you put in masters, 100 meters, 99-year-olds, and you got two 99-year-olds going at it. It is just so inspiring to see that even at that age, they're not allowing their age to determine, how they should live their life. Of course, in certain cases where you're just unable to, if you're sick and infirmed or things happen to you, then I understand that. But I think a lot of people, they buy into the notion that after a certain age, forget it, give up, let the bodies go, and don't really take care of themselves. And so for me, health and wellness is very much part of my ministry, if you will, or message that I also incorporate in my sculptures.
Wow, and that is such an amazing insight to share with people. So if people, okay, I'm not saying my age, because I keep telling everyone I'm 21, but if people wanted to get involved, okay, I like you. So, if people wanted to get more involved in athletics and to start, say, doing masters type athletics, what would they need to do?
Well, the obvious thing is to find a club that is local to your area. And that's very easy to do. You simply put in Masters Athletics Local in Google, something like that. And a local track will come up. Go to the local track, speak with the coaches there. And pretty much all of the clubs I know of have Masters athletes there. And they will give you the kind of instructions of, when to come training, or first of all, find out what it is your aims are. Do you want to compete regionally, nationally, internationally? And they will hopefully work with you in terms of giving you a program that you can work with. But again, I don't want to just limit it to just track and field, anything. Not everyone is into running and jumping. If it's tennis, if it's swimming, if whatever it might be, providing you do something, I think it's great, because the government spends so much revenue on just trying to get people mobile after a certain age, when we can do so much for ourselves.
Yeah, and that is so crucial, because that also takes me into something that I always like to talk about, which is taking responsibility for self.
Mm-hmm.
And we're each responsible for our own well-being, for our own security. But I found in this society, sometimes it's easy to sit back.
Absolutely, yeah.
Somebody else to be responsible for you. So when you're saying, take responsibility for your well-being, so that the government isn't investing to fix you once you're could be.
And I think as well, if we look at the climate that we now live in, a few years ago, when you and I were in our teens, when we were growing up, we didn't have, the iPads and iPods and the digital world. We didn't live in the internet age. And so I believe we were more active. It was a different environment. And I think we're living in a world now where the general sort of mentality of many young people is a very static lifestyle, sat down, clicking away, and not really doing much. Even sport has taken a decline, I think, in many ways, because they don't think it's fashionable. And technology, which is an amazing and wonderful thing, I'm not going to knock it in any way. I think there needs to be a balance there, and I talk about that in the sculpture, having a balanced life. And it's so important that we educate our younger ones growing up, the next generations as they come through, that as great as it is to be technical wizards, the older ones, we have a lot of wisdom that we can pass on. And I think it's important for us to pass the baton on, which I talk about in the sculpture as well, passing the baton. And you hear about that in the video. And so, yes, that for me is very key, so that we can learn from the generations coming up, providing we also understand that they must not ignore the fact that we also have a legacy that we can bring to bear on them, that they can learn from.
And that is so true about legacy and the interaction between the ages. Because again, when we were growing up, you had a grandparent or you had the extended family around. So you could sit down, especially around holiday periods, and listen to the old stories of when they were growing up, things they used to do. And that was the way. It was very oratory.
Right.
We always sat down, people chatting about stories. And so that we learned a lot. And I know for myself, in my younger years, my experience was from listening to older people.
Right.
When I heard what they had done and how they had overcome things, it meant that I didn't have to go down the same road, what they had done, my own success, because I'd had the experience from them.
Absolutely. I think the part of the problem that may exist with some young people is because they are so adept to technology and they are so ahead of, if you will, earlier generations, they sometimes regard the older ones as not as smart and not as intelligent. And whereas some of us may not be as technically advanced as them, that doesn't necessarily negate the fact that there is so much wisdom and knowledge and understanding that we will have that they can't possibly have at their age. They will acquire it over time, and that comes with time. That comes with experience. And I think if that gap can be bridged between, if you will, the generation gap, you want to call it, the better. Because by all means, what the young ones know is fantastic, and we can learn from them. And as I said before, it's so important for them not to think that because they're young and because they're into technology, that they know it all. Absolutely not.
But then, because you mentioned about, each of us learn from each other. And okay, you're doing your bit in terms of helping and aspiring younger people. So speaking to people, say, of our generation and even older, how would you suggest or recommend to them that they themselves can move forward and engage with more younger people to inspire them?
With the older generation, you mean? Well, I think we've kind of sort of answered that to a certain degree when I say that, because of the experiences that they have, and because, unfortunately, in many cases, a lot of older folks tend sometimes to reserve that information. They don't want to share their mistakes. They don't want to sort of, open the closet and show the skeletons that maybe, they have in there. But if that is done in a way to nurture and educate and inspire, then that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with saying, when I was younger or when I went through this experience, I messed up. I didn't realize, or I didn't understand. And then for them to say, this is part of the growing process. Nobody knows everything about everything, no matter how smart or intelligent you are. And so I think for those who are, if you will, more advanced in years, that is a blessing, certainly for the younger generation. And I think it's having, again, going back to the earlier comment, having the mindset to understand that the information that we have here, these are gifts that we can hand over and pass on to the next generation. And we shouldn't be, myself and those older than me, should not be afraid of passing that on. I'm not saying you've got to reveal all your skeletons in your cupboard, but to let people, the younger ones, know that we're all vulnerable, we're all subject to make mistakes. But as a result of making those mistakes, and I talk about this in the sculpture, as a result of making those mistakes, it's all well and good and it's okay to fall and fail, providing you learn why. In the sports that I talk about in the sculpture, one of the things I talk about is how do we deal with failure? Growing up, I hated to lose. I was a bad loser. But as a result of that, I realized, well, rather than getting upset at 12 or 13 and 14 if I lost, examine why I lost and see what I can improve,
Yes.
where I can focus on. Because as I said, no one is perfect. And once you begin to create that balance and say, well, you're going to succeed in time and you're going to fail in time, but when you fail, if you can learn from those failures, that's where you can benefit. That's how you can turn a negative into a positive.
Well, and again, there's that saying, isn't there? It's not failure; it's actually feedback.
Absolutely.
And that is the thing, because we are conditioned sometimes from a young age. Oh, you've got to be the best. You've got to work hard. You've got to achieve. But where are we taught as youngsters that you try your best, but if you do not hit the mark that you're aiming for, review it and assess it, reconfigure, and try again?
I'm not 100% sure about the story of Colonel Saunders. I've heard it, and I think I'm fairly accurate. I believe he tried and tried and tried and tried and tried and tried for years, trying this and trying that and trying this. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think it was, I'm going to guess here, but roughly by about the age of, I think it was about 60, he decided, or 60, maybe 70, he decided he's going to go back to what he knew he was good at doing, which was cooking. Mm-hmm. And he launched Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, I'm not promoting fast food. I'm just simply saying, as a result of him sticking to his guns, by the age of, I think, 80, he was, I think, a billionaire. So it's so important to endure. It's so important to believe in yourself. It's so important to have the mindset that allows you to a degree, ignore the naysayers. Yeah. Because only you can see your life through your eyes. And for me, it is so important to persevere. And that's why, for me, I'm on a journey which, I'm continually learning and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. But it's also something I want to make sure the younger generations can tap into and see, it might not happen. See, we live in a world which is, There's a fast food mentality. I want it now. I want it now. I want it now. I want it now. And I talk about this in the sculpture. I'm loving this. In the sculpture.
Come and do a thing, a live broadcast about
absolutely. But in the sculpture, I have a tunnel. And I talk about going through that tunnel. And that tunnel is bottom part of the tunnel is part of the number 3. Why? Because there are 3 things you learn when you go through the tunnel of experience, rather than having things just handed to you on a plate. When you go through that tunnel and you see the light at the end of the tunnel and you go through the adversities, you overcome the obstacles, you go against the naysayers. As you go through that experience, when you come out on the other side, there are 3 things you acquire that you cannot acquire instantly. That is wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And so it is important to understand that these are parts of the building blocks of life. Sometimes, someone turns around and says, well, here's $1 million. You're 20 years old. Here's $1 million. Away you go. And if your mindset isn't correct, you can still be poor. How many times have we heard the story of people winning the lottery? There's one particular gentleman who won the lottery. I think it was about 167 million. And he bought a private jet or boats and houses. Within 2 years, he was bankrupt. Mm. So it goes back to the mindset.
Yeah.
So even if you don't necessarily have a great deal of wealth, you can be extremely wealthy mentally. And if you are mentally wealthy here, when finances come your way, you will know how to manage them.
Wow, that is powerful. Can you just repeat that, please?
If you have, can I remember what I said? Absolutely.
The mental wealthy bit, that was powerful.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of the mindset, you can have a poor mind. And if you have a poor mind, you can receive millions and millions, and before you know it, it's all gone. And so for me, it's about having a wealthy mind, because if you have a wealthy mind, when you are afforded, if you will, riches or wealth and so forth, you will know how best to manage those funds.
Fabulous. Thank you. And I'm going to two things. First of all, okay, you're known for your sculpture, you're known for your athletics. So in years to come, what is it you would want people to say about you?
Wow. I've got his artwork in my house. Seriously, I think I would like people to say that he inspired me to believe in myself. He humanized art. In other words, making it relevant to the masses. And that they were able to internalize and personalize messages from the sculpture that they could apply to their own lives and also pass on to the next generations. That's a good question, actually. I guess there are many things I would like people to say, but I think in general, I would like to be someone, or to be known as someone whose works and speaking has helped to elevate them to another platform, another plateau, and to think outside of the box.
Brilliant. And as a parting message for our viewers, those that are with us live, who we appreciate this evening, and those that may watch this on the replay, what's the one key message you would like people to use going forward from this evening, having had this introductory session with you?
Whatever the mess is in your life, whatever that mess might be, look at it from my perspective as a lump of clay. That's how I start all my sculptures, as a lump of muddy mess. And the euphemism there is, how do I transform that muddy mess into a masterpiece?
Wow.
Because if we only focus on the muddy mess, we will wallow in the quagmire of that. That becomes the regrets. How many people regret things in life? So many people have regrets. And what they do, they compile those regrets day in, day out. I wish I'd studied harder at school. I wish I didn't say that to this person. I wish I didn't slam the door that. And before you know it, you're carrying this huge burden on your back through your life. And so for me, it's about understanding that we are going to mess up. We are going to make mistakes. And that's going to be part of that mess within our lives. But how do we transform our lives from a muddy mess to a masterpiece? And one of those ways is, for those that we may have wronged in the past, make peace with them, even if they don't want to hear. That helps you to remove a lot of those burdens and those regrets. And that frees you to be at peace with yourself. So transform your life from a muddy mess to a masterpiece. And if they want to know more about how to do that, My sculpture. You saw it coming, didn't you? Absolutely. I've got to plug it.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful piece, and
Thank you.
I would say to anybody that if you ever get the opportunity to be somewhere where Donald is live and sharing his story about the sculpture, then please listen to him sharing that story, because it is something that is so remarkable. And Donald, I would like to say to you, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence today, for being open when I invited you to come on the show with me. You didn't hesitate, you just said yes. You didn't even drill me as to what the show was about. So, and it's been such a pleasure to have you here. And to everyone that's joined us this evening, thank you so much for taking the time out of your Friday evening to be here in the Executive Suite with us, hearing about Donald's fabulous works, about his philosophy on life and the mission that he's on and the legacy that he's looking to leave, and inviting us to actually be part of that legacy if we so wish. And, just being an inspiration, because this is the Executive Suite, and this is the place where I invite people to come to release their pressures, to actually reconnect with their purpose and their mission, and recharge so that they can move forward and have the life that they love. And you helped us do that this evening, Donna, and I really thank you for being here. Wish
You're
you
welcome.
a great weekend and all the best for next Thursday.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Thank you so much. And
Okay.
can I just say a very special thank you to a gentleman in Los Angeles who I know is listening now. His name is Daniel Nguyen. He was the first international patron that came on board with my project. And I have to acknowledge him, because having individuals like Daniel has been fantastic, and it's helped me to sort of get the word out there on a global scale. So thank you to Daniel, and thanks for tuning in, Daniel. Appreciate it. Roxanne, it's been a pleasure.
Okay, thank you, Donald. It's been a pleasure having you too.
Thank you. Take care now. Bye-bye.
So that was Donald Brown, the award-winning sculptor and championship athlete. And this has been the Executive Suite. So thank you for joining us on Inspire to Achieve Global TV. And if I welcome you to keep joining us on the platform, to put in your requests, because on a Monday evening at 7, I'll be sharing content with you around how you as a busy executive leader can actually create your own space so that you have the energy, the wherewithal to just achieve your goals and your mission, and to get others to buy into your vision without you feeling overwhelmed and burnt out. And if you're around in London this weekend, on Sunday, as I mentioned earlier on, we have our Yes You Can Inspire to Achieve Speakers Awards. I know we have a couple of speakers tickets available. So go onto our website, and let me see if I've got the web address here that I can share with you. I'm just having a look. Yes, I have. Yeah, so you can go onto our website and go to events, and you can actually book your ticket to come along and either be a nominated speaker and receive an award, or come along as a guest and feel the vibe, feel the energy in the room with us all. And if you've enjoyed this evening's interview, please share, comment, lots of hearts and likes, because then we can keep doing what we do, and we can keep inspiring you and showing you how you can inspire others. So this has been me with you this evening, Roxanne St. Clair, on Welcome to the Executive Suite. And I look forward to connecting with you again on Monday evening at 7. But I may even see you this weekend, as we will be in Whitechapel at the Holiday Inn all day Sunday for our Speakers Awards. Thank you, and have a fabulous evening. Good night.